from Gapminder. So in this picture, let's see, how do I go to full screen? Great. So this is Gapminder. How many of you know Gapminder? Okay. So this is a picture where this is income per person down here internationally, and this is life expectancy. Every circle represents a country. The diameter of the circle is proportional to the population of the country. And this is a snapshot for 2009. In blue is Africa, yellow is America, and so forth geographically. Now what we can do is we can see what happens from starting, this is a picture in 1800, and I've highlighted 3 countries, the United States, China, and India. So here we are in 1800, and not much is happening in the early 1800s, and all of a sudden you can see a little bit movement here of the United States. But it's still pretty flat until all of a sudden, in around 1830, 1840, the United States is starting to move up in income per person. Nothing's happening with China. India's still dead over here, and but there's some movement over here with the United States. Now we're in 1860. China is doing some movement down here, but nothing significant. The United States is moving up in income per person, but not in life expectancy. But in 1886, approximately, the United States starts moving up. India and China are still wallowing down here in poor land, and the United States is now moving up both in income per person and in life expectancy. Until now it's 1924, 1926. Look now, focus what China does. China takes a movement up to the left. What's going on there? Now it's 1950, and China then heads back up. The United States is still going up there, and they're way, way behind. It's now 1967. They're moving up in life expectancy, but they're not moving up in income per person. All of a sudden, in around 1980, they take a right-hand turn and heading towards the United States. Now it's 1993, year 2000. Now we're almost at present. So what's happened? So there's so many things that we can see from this. The one thing that we can see, sort of rate of change moving in this direction by the relative distance between disks. We can see that the direction that they're going, we can see clearly that now China and India are aimed at the United States and moving towards the United States. And you can then easily project when are they going to catch up, because the United States is slowing down. But one of the things that's interesting here is what was happening in there. What was happening in there? That was from 1935, 1950, something like that, the Chinese Revolution. During the Chinese Revolution, the income per person was going down, right? Now, why did I show this example?
The logarithmic scale.
This is a logarithmic scale down here. Of course you'd have to use a logarithmic scale, because the values of the variable of income per person over all the countries in the world clearly spans more than 2 orders of magnitude. And if Gapminder didn't, by default, show a logarithmic scale, then this area right here for the Chinese Revolution, focus on that area right in there, please, would look like this. Can't see any fluctuations in the lower value, right? Looks completely different. We have this dilemma when we're trying to show information where the values of the variables have a large range. Either you use a logarithmic scale and people don't know it's a logarithmic scale, or they use a linear scale and you can't see fluctuations in the lower values. And last example, or set of examples, linear to exponential. And here's what I mean about that. Some of you might be relieved that I am going to add some functions to the curriculum table, and here I go. I said I would turn the NCTM standards of 1989 up on its head and the Common Core standards, and that's what I'm doing. But now, let's put them at the bottom. So it makes sense if we're going to study the toolkit functions that we start with linear functions and their transformations. Makes sense. Where do we go from there? Y equals x to the 2, or y equals 2 to the x? Well, I understand that we would want to spend some time here because there's one really important application. When you drop something, the height over time is quadratic. And when its path in horizontal and vertical is also quadratic. And then the applications seem to slow down quite a bit. There are applications. Occasionally somebody comes running across 10 lane. I found one. An application, you know, for polynomials. Whereas over here, for exponential functions, there are a huge number of applications, unending number of applications. So I think we should emphasize over here and drastically de-emphasize here. My conjecture why we spend so much time with polynomials is that when we get to calculus, it's easy to explain the rules of differentiation and integration with polynomials. How convenient. So let's just spend 4 years prepping for that moment, right? Right? I'm not anti-polynomial, I'm just saying, you know what? The application's over here. If we want to make people quantitatively literate, we better spend a heck of a lot more time over here. And so here's an example. So it turns out that the blood alcohol content for alcohol decays linearly, and for most other drugs decays exponentially. So if you're taking this is an arbitrary scale here, but let's do a comparative scale where 8 is the overdose, critical area, everything over 8. So if you've taken Valium, if you've taken ibuprofen overdosing on any of these cocaine, psychotropic drugs, and you've taken too much, right, then you quickly come down out of the danger zone. But alcohol in your blood forms a toxin as a byproduct of metabolization. And your body says, time out, I can't metabolize anymore because there's too much of this toxin in my system. And so that's why it decreases linearly. Now, so I talk to kids about the following concept. If you binge drink, once you get that alcohol in your system, time is the only thing to get it out. And you're going to be in that toxic zone for a long time. So if you're going to drink, and you're going to drink 6 beers, then you should drink 1 and let it metabolize, another one making a sawtooth, staying below the toxic level, overdose level all the time. So you might want to drink a beer, wait an hour. Drink a beer, wait an hour. Some of you might think about doing that as well. The point here is the phenomena around us are almost always linear and exponential if we're looking for the toolkit functions. And the polynomial functions, there aren't very many. Let's study some of them, but let's move on. Because of time, I'm not going to share this last example. It's about global warming. Let me just say, this is the Keeling curve. Let me just say that if our kids don't understand the quantitative analysis of global warming, then it doesn't make any difference what we teach them, right? And I'll admit, I'm trying to convince them that global warming is a problem. What's important is that they can make their own decision about global warming. And if we really educate them about this, hopefully they're going to get agitated and do something about it. Anyway, I'm going to move on and end by saying the following. I've talked about examples of a relevant curriculum. Let me briefly talk about characteristics of a relevant curriculum. First of all, I think they need to be utilized. I've given many examples I hope are compelling that can be used in a day-to-day context. But let's think about college. Most students go on to college and don't use calculus in college. Okay, math majors, engineers, and hard sciences, yes, they use calculus. But if you're studying most anything else, it might be a requirement to take calculus, but that's basically, are you smart enough to jump over this hurdle and stay in our institution in this track? But then it's not used. What is used if you're going to do any kind of research in any of these fields? Statistics. Secondly, less is more. we need to start giving them captivating problems. 1 through 31 odd and 43 ain't doing it. Perhaps we should just be doing number 43. I think we need to have virtual resources instead of textbooks. This is really important for public schools because you buy a textbook and then you're stuck for 6 or 7 years. So if we make virtual resources, then they can make quicker decisions, like those of us that teach in private schools have the privilege to do. And lastly, I'm a big believer that content should be open content and free, that the NSF should give a priority to funding curriculum development teams that say, we're not going to create this and then publish it to make money. We're going to, yes, we're good writers, give us some money, and then we're going to make it open and free to everybody, so that everybody can say, that's the best curriculum. Let's start using that. And lastly, that it should be designed for the majority. That this curriculum should be less esoteric, understood for or meant for only the select few, like poetry full of esoteric allusions. Or number 4, intended to be relevant only to the initiates of a group, like the esoteric doctrines of Pythagoras. And less exoteric, suitable for or communicated to the general public. We are doing an outstanding job with the top 8% of our students. But there's a vast, lost majority of students who are ready for us to turn our attention to them. They are hungry to learn a curriculum that is designed for them and the world that they live in. They are ready to succeed in a math class, and if they do, they'll sign up to take math class again next year. And they are eager to become quantitatively literate. But they're waiting for us to deliver it to them. And I'm confident that if we deliver this to them, they will respond beyond our wildest imagination. Thank you very much. Glad to take them, or comments, maybe comments, too. We don't have to. Anybody? Yes?
Nils, you should share your website.
I have a website called Ahbel.com. I don't sell anything on it, but if you Google my last name, you go to Ahbel.com, and if you look at past, now, it's under past presentations, you'll see a link to this Prezi. And actually, and also, I wrote a full year's worth of curriculum that's free and open, designed for students leaving Algebra 2, and a curriculum that has all of these problems and many more, and that content is open and free and for anybody to use. A full year's worth of curriculum. Yes?
Have you attempted to implement this relevant curriculum, and if so, what's the response of the school and
have I tried to implement this curriculum, and what's the response of the school? One of the things that I can tell you is that I've spent most of my career teaching kids, focusing on kids who hate mathematics and have done poorly the year before. And if you offer them this type of curriculum, actually often what happens is that they'll go home and start talking at the dinner table about what they studied in school that day. And when you talk to parents at parents' night, the parents look at you and say, what are you doing with these kids? You never talked about math before, and suddenly they're night after night talking about these kinds of issues, because I believe they're eager and hungry to learn this kind of stuff. That's been my reaction.
How do you spell Ahbel.com?
A-H-B-E-L.
Thank you.
Yes. It's not to confuse me with the other Nils Ahbel, who died in 1827, the father of group theory. Yes.
Would you please consider making the video that's been recorded tonight available?
I hope to do that. I hope to put it on my website. If it turns out well enough, I would be glad to do that. I hope to, like to make everything that all the content that I create free and available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Send me an email if I don't do it after a while. Yes. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.